Meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee, which has been convened as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as possible following the meeting. The meeting agenda pack can also be viewed on the Council's website. Everyone participating in the meeting will be attending either in the Council chamber or from remote locations. Members attending remotely must keep their cameras on. So I'll see a sea of faces in a minute when you all turn your cameras on for the duration of the meeting. However, all attendees should keep their microphones off until invited to speak. Members and officers can indicate they want to speak to pressing the hands up icon. And I now proceed to the agenda business. But before doing so, can I just welcome obviously Councillor Easterbrook for I think you gave your apologies last time because you were doing other things, but great to see you in person.
Thank you, Chair. That was the time before.
Oh, well, there we are then.
I was at the last two meetings.
Right, that's it. That must be one of my senile moments then. I apologise for that. And can I also welcome Deb Austin, who is our newly appointed independent member. Deb's attending the meeting today for the first time, so welcome, Deb. And look forward to your participation in the meeting. Agenda item 1 is the apologies for absence. I've been given one apology, which is Andrew Bagley, for this meeting. Are there any other apologies? No, none shown. Okay, item 2 then is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Item 3 then is the approval of minutes, which is pages 3 to 14. They're for correctness only. Anyone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Richard.
Seconded.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? This is the way to do it. No, thank you. They're carried. Next one is the item 4, which is the Governance and Audit Committee Action Report. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on the Governance and Audit Committee Action Record. The action record is attached at Appendix A, and the recommendation is to note the action record and provide any comments as appropriate. Thank you very much.
Stephen, are there any comments on the action record? No, obviously some of these items will be dealt with anyway as we go forward. The Porthcawl Harbour report accounts have been sent off, haven't they, Nigel? No. Yes, they have. So some of those things have been dealt with. So if there are no questions or comments, and someone prepared to move. Oh,
I'll formally move,
sorry.
Chair.
Can I just jump in? Sorry, my fault. Sorry. Page 17, number 6, and the action there regarding the scrutiny chairs meeting.
Which page now we're talking about?
Page 17 of the pack.
Yeah, we're
That's different. We've got minutes.
Yeah, it's 15.
Oh, sorry. I thought we'd moved on. Sorry.
No,
my apologies, Chair.
That's all right. No worries.
Yeah, it's under this item, Chair.
Yeah, we haven't got it. I don't know what it is on that.
Okay, it's so
17 and the 15 is it?
It's the Governance and Audit Committee Action Record, and it would be page 1, 2, 3, page 3.
Page 3.
Item 6.
A corporate probably. That one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not right. I won't call like that. Oh, hang on. We might have different.
Yeah, that's the previous minutes, yeah. So it would be down by here.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
On it?
Yeah.
Chair, I can say a few words about that if you want.
Yeah, go on, Stephen.
I mean, there was a meeting yesterday of the chairs of the scrutiny committees, and this has been put on the list for discussion. I also know that the Democratic Services Manager is attending this meeting and could probably answer more detailed questions about this.
Yeah, thanks for that, Steve. Colin, what was the, I've got it now, it's item 6 on page 17 on Appendix A.
Yeah.
It's page 17. Richard, have you got page
Okay.
17?
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, go on, Chair, I'll get it now. Page 17, appendix.
Are we all on the same page now?
Yeah, go on.
Colin?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, if you recall, we were concerned about, not a lack of, I suppose, but we wanted to see better communication and coordination between different committees. And a meeting was organised for yesterday. Now, what I expected as a member of this committee is that you'd be invited to that meeting, even though you're not a scrutiny chair. Unless there's something in our constitution that prevents that from happening, I didn't see a problem in that happening. For the purpose of, as I said, good communication, or better communication and coordination, because we have had quite a few issues, haven't we, over the last couple of years, really. So I just want to say, if you weren't invited, I'm disappointed that you weren't invited. Thank you, Chair.
Going to take that, Stephen.
I think Rachel has put her hand up.
Oh, yep, Rachel?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Rachel Keepins, Democratic Services Manager. We did hold a Scrutiny Chairs meeting yesterday, and we discussed the link between governance and audit and the scrutiny, because I think it's something that we do need to take forward formally. It was a very positive meeting. I think in relation to Councillor Davis's query, there is scrutiny chairs have to meet, themselves. They've got their own kind of things to discuss regarding their own agendas and regarding other aspects. They have said, though, that they would welcome meeting with the governance and audit chair to discuss the linking up and how we work together between scrutiny and governance and audit. In relation to kind of the updates, this column has kind of been added in terms of providing an update now from how if governance and audit raise anything, there is in your action record now an update going to be regularly provided to any scrutiny response. And then what we've agreed, what scrutiny chairs have agreed, is that in terms of their own forward work programs, then they're going to add an additional paragraph in their regular forward work program update report, where they can get any updates from governance and audit. So anything that the committee raises can be flagged up then. Any of the new inspection reports that come through can be flagged up in that process. And then the committees can then consider it as part of their forward work program. Obviously, members have to appreciate that scrutiny, it is their own forward work program. So if, as I said, they would have to see about priorities and governance and audit raise items that they think need to be looked at, the scrutiny committees will have to consider that in amongst their other priorities. I will say their forward work programs are pretty full. They do also have a very strict criteria to meet in terms of what items they consider on their forward work programs. So it would need to marry up with that. I know, for example, on the Porthcawl Harbour one that was raised, that already has been discussed in scrutiny. So that's an update we can provide to yourselves in terms of that, because it was one of the recommendations from the budget last year. In relation to the fraud, for example, I think it was a concern, if I understand, about the staffing. And I think the view is that it may not be something that's necessarily scrutinised by the cost committee in its entirety, but I think in terms of if the governance and audit have any concerns about that, that maybe a recommendation can come directly from governance and audit committee. But as I said, we will make sure there's a direct linkage between the two sides now, between scrutiny and governance and audit, as is needed under the Local Government Election Act. So hopefully, Chair, you might hear from us very, very soon to organise a meeting for you to meet with the scrutiny chairs. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Councillor Griffiths?
Yeah, I guess this is the governance and audit committee. So our primary objective is governance, more or less, which is, are we doing governance right across the organisation? And it seems odd to me that in a meeting to discuss the relationship between the critical scrutiny committees, which includes governance and audit, and the chair of that was not present and not actually having significant input into that. And what you just described is what 3 other scrutiny chairs have sort of, have decided and sort of imposed. And I know it may be included in the future, but my view is that we should be including the governance and audit chair as an integral part of the governance schema within the organisation. and that doesn't seem to be accepted by the scrutiny chairs. They will invite him in. No, I don't think that's the wrong way around. I would go further, and I would say that the governance and audit should actually be the chair of a meeting that coordinates the work across the scrutiny committees, because that's the only level at which we have a true overview of the governance process. So excuse me if I speak on your behalf, Chair, but I would expect you to have a more active role in this rather than being a passive and a pleasant invitee to a future meeting.
Thank you for that, Councillor Griffiths. I was keeping my powder dry, but I will comment after Rachel's responded.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I appreciate what you're saying. It was literally, we were having a scrutiny chairs meeting anyway. It was a scrutiny chairs meeting. There was numerous things on the agenda to discuss. As I said, so this was kind of introducing the aspects that governance and audit have raised, and to raise it with the scrutiny chairs. And then, as I said, the follow-up action then was to agree to a meeting with them. There has to be an understanding of the role. It does state in the Local Government Election Act a clear division in role. There is a division. And as I said, it's for scrutiny to scrutinise, whereas it's what the local authority does, whereas it's for the Governance and Audit Committee to look at process, for example. So as I said, it's a joint working, and I think they definitely want to build a relationship and make sure that we are following the governance, the Local Government Election Act guidance. But as I said, it was a scrutiny chairs meeting anyway that we needed to hold, and we were just adding that in to kind of introduce it to the scrutiny chairs. And then, as I said, hopefully a joint meeting between them all. It's not anyone chairs it, to be fair. It's just an informal meeting and a discussion to take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Rachel. I understand what's been said clearly, but I think the point that Councillor Griffiths and Councillor Davis raised is that we are the Governance and Audit Committee of this authority, ensuring governance, right, appropriateness, procedure, etc., etc. We don't refer matters likely to scrutiny committee. They've either been raised through an audit issue, or they've been raised by Audit Wales, or they've been raised because a department has had some audit recommendations which they've not been complying with. So I understand the conundrum that we're in here, but in reality, if governance and audit doesn't carry out its statutory functions, if we didn't sign off the annual governance statement, or we didn't sign off the annual performance plan, and as you'll know, under the annual performance plan, where you're doing the backward-looking report, we make recommendations to the cabinet of the authority. They have to respond directly to us as a committee as to whether or not they wish to accept the recommendations or not. And if they don't want to accept them, then they have to give reasons why, and they have to report that back to us. And I think, picking up what you said, Rachel, we need a process whereby if we refer a matter to the scrutiny committee, if they want to push it off for 6 months or 9 months, then I need the chair of the scrutiny committee to come here and tell me why he's done that, given that we've raised it as a governance issue of this authority. I would hope that we can work in unison here, because as we all know, scrutiny committees are not there to knock the administration or do that. They're there to provide some positive input into the running of the authority for the administration to take on board and to consider in improving the service delivery of the council. So in my view, and again, I'm happy to take this outside this meeting, because we're all here to improve the lot for the citizens of Bridgend County Borough. But I do take some concern that if matters have not been looked at, which have been referred to a scrutiny committee from governance and audit, then that does give me concern. I understand their priorities, I understand their forward work programme, but I would have thought they should actually say, oh, we've got a referral for governance and audit, we'll deal with this immediately, and then refer it back. What I don't expect is it to be pushed back for months and months and months, because it can have an impact on the authority. We won't sign off something, and if that happens, then we've got major issues. I'm happy to work together with anyone. I'll work together with you, Rachel, or the chairs of scrutiny, because all we're there for is to improve the lot of the citizens of County Borough. So maybe we leave it there at the moment. We'll have a chat offline. I'm happy to attend any meeting with any chair or whatever. And I'm happy to have a meeting with yourself and Kelly or whatever. You know, again, I think sometimes we get hung up because of the guidance that comes from Welsh Government. You have to remember it is only guidance. Whilst it's persuasory, it's only guidance. And I think if we can improve the lot for this county borough, then that's what we should do. I'll leave it there. Martin Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. The only thing I would slightly disagree with, or perhaps a middle way, is that a number of times over my time in this committee, we've said there are issues that are emerging issues that we are concerned about because they're process issues or governance issues or matters arising from audits. And we've said refer that to scrutiny for them to have a look at. I think perhaps a middle ground is that we should be more active and we should have a look at those issues where they have, you know, there's a middle ground, isn't there? What's scrutiny, what's audit? But I think we should err on the side of bringing them in here and taking some of that workload off scrutiny, you know, where it's appropriate, where it's about policy, where it's about decision making, where it's about ideas and, you know, forward thinking about it. Yeah, that's clearly a scrutiny issue. But where matters are arising because they're emerging issues, or audit issues, perceived failures or what have you, I really think perhaps we should be more active. And rather than just talk about process and governance, we should say, right, you in here, explain yourself and examine the situation more in this committee rather than, as I said, talking about the process. I think that might be a middle ground, and maybe between the two committees, or the two committees, but audit and scrutiny, we can cover more ground collectively there.
I think we'll have to agree to disagree on that because governance and audit have got a very specific role. Scrutiny committees are there to look at the all we're required to do is to ensure that the process and procedures adopted by the council are fair, reasonable and robust. We're not here to interfere in any of the governance arrangements in reality about how some of the decisions are made unless they're unreasonable, that they're no reasonable decision that the authority could make, etc., etc. And I think we just need to be very careful that the reason scrutiny committees are made are there to improve the lot for the council. We're not there to improve the lot for we're there to improve the lot, but we've got to provide that checks and balance. We cannot interfere in the decision making of the council. Whether people like decisions or not is not a matter for us. It's a matter for the administration, the council of this authority. So I think it's a further discussion we need to have, Martin, I think, and sit down. Obviously, I need some guidance again from the lawyer of the authority because that's what I'm required to do. And I think, you know, we could get some maybe middle ground, but this committee is not there to do task and finish issues or things like that. So maybe that's a discussion we're going to have to just agree to differ on. Richard.
Thank you, Chair, and I agree totally with what your sentiments you just said. Can I just ask Rachel, because obviously she's just stated now basically that scrutiny have dealt with the Porthcawl Harbour issue. Do you know, Rachel, when we're going to have a copy of that judgment so we can look at what recommendations scrutiny have made to make sure that what we actually seen in the very instance has been done properly? Otherwise, if it goes on months, if there's a problem, we can't deal with it. So I just, you know, there's a bit of joy in up thinking you to be good to be done as what the chair and yourself have said. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can, Chair, in relation to the Porthcawl Harbour one, yes, if there was actually a BREP meeting, so it was one of the budget recommendations. So again, when we're looking at our budget this year, we'll be revisiting the budget recommendations that were made last year, so we can get a formal update on that. And again, feedback. That's the whole process that we want to agree then by meeting with the audit chair to agree this process for feeding the two-way between governance and audit and scrutiny. Because I think that's just what's missing. But all committees want to work together. It's just agreeing that process, as I said. So this is where we'll organise a meeting very shortly to do this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rachel. And again, you know, thank you very much for looking at it. But there's a message in Richard's comments there that we do need a report back. So if scrutiny has dealt with it, then give us a report back as to what their outcome was and what their recommendations were. And if I'm right, and I hope I am right, the issue about Porthcawl Harbour came about because people didn't understand the whole basis of Porthcawl Harbour. that was the concern I had. It's not for me to investigate what Porth Gow have. So all we're there for is to understand the accounts and work forward. But it was the intricate nature of Porthcawl Harbour, how the authority supports it, what responsibilities they got for it, etc., etc. And I think that's why we referred it to Scrutiny Committee to say, look, can someone just tell people what it's all about? Because I don't think it's only members of our committee that didn't understand the nitty-gritty. I'm sure there's lots of members of the council who didn't understand it as well. So if that's been done, Rachel, that's great. And I think if Scrutiny are looking at it, and that may be the missing link, report it back to us to say, you've referred this to Scrutiny A, they've looked at it, this is the outcome, this is what they delivered, this is the paper they provided or the report they provided, which came from the director, I assume, and, you know, are you now satisfied with it? And at least then we can knock it on the head, write it off our action list and end the story. You understand, I think, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. As I said, it wasn't an in-depth. It wasn't an in-depth investigation, I will say. It was as part of the budget recommendations and the budget proposals last year, members will recall. So as I said, but we'll look at a process and try and get something back to you on that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's like it. I think it wasn't the budget issue, it's people just don't understand how the Porthcawl Harbour entity is organised. I think that was the real issue. And, you know, like Nigel kindly does the budget, but again, then there are questions that were raised. So, yep, that's great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, if there are no other questions and there's no other comments, can I have someone to move the recommendation that we note the action record?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Can I have a
Yeah,
seconder?
seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you. I thought that would have been easy, but there we are. That's the purpose of this committee. Well done. Item 5 then, the Audit Wales Governance and Audit Committee reports, pages 19 to 38. For you to introduce colleagues from Audit Wales.
It is colleagues from Audit Wales who will be presenting the report that they've undertaken on the financial sustainability of the council, and there's the management responses attached as well following that.
Thank you. So do we have a willing taker from Audit Wales to do the report, please?
Hi, Chair. It's Sarah Jane Byrne from Audit Wales
Hi,
here.
Sarah.
Good morning. Hi. Just to say, my colleague Charles Rigby will be talking through the findings from our report. Just a bit of a quick reminder about this piece of work. It is a piece of work that we've done at all 22 councils, so it's what we call a thematic piece of work around financial sustainability. And we also will be publishing a national report in the next couple of months. So just wanted to remind the committee in terms of that piece of work. But I'll hand you over to my colleague Charles now, who'll talk you through the findings, and I'm sure officers then will want to come in terms of their response to that piece of work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'll take it from there. Thanks, Sarah. Good morning. Lovely to meet you all. My name's Charles Rigby, and I'm an audit lead in the local government team here at Audit Wales. And myself and my colleague Alison delivered this piece of work in Bridgend along with David and Sarah. Just before I get into the report, which starts in page 23 of your agenda pack, which I just want to set the kind of background which is set out in the first couple of pages of the report. Obviously, financial sustainability is critically important, particularly in the challenging financial circumstances that the whole of the public sector is facing at the moment. As a result of that, this report is deliberately forward-looking, which for members that have been present for previous reporting from Audit Wales on financial sustainability is a slight change in our approach and focus on this. It's very much on the arrangements the council has in place to tackle challenges in the future. Within the report as well, just to highlight as well, to draw to your attention, pages 9 and 10 set out some context behind some of the significant strains that the council and particular officers have had to manage in recent times, such as inflation, which obviously is challenging to foresee, but also has a real impact in terms of response. And we would just like to underline that this is a report around improvement and that forward-looking view, and is very much not saying anybody has done a bad job previously or anything like that. It's very much understanding how the council can improve their arrangements and take assurance from them from that forward-looking perspective. So as Sarah Jane touched on, there will be a national report as well, which will touch on the kind of national influences, the issues and trends in a separate report. So they're very much not included in this report. This is focused on the local arrangements the council has in place. And I just want to highlight as well that, of course, this is a report on Bridgend. But there's no individual council that has a perfect report, so to speak. So it's taken on that kind of on the perspective of improving the individual arrangements of Bridgend rather than a comparison with other councils, for example. So if we draw then to paragraph 16 on page 28, it sets out the overall conclusion that the council understands its financial position with good arrangements to support its financial sustainability, which it flexes and adapts, but is at an early stage of developing its long-term approach. In the paragraphs below, we set out in detail the reasons why we've reached this conclusion. I'm not going to run through all of those, just because I'll assume everyone's read the report. But just to highlight that we found that the long-term strategy is under development, but there is some understanding of closing the gap in the medium term. That one of our recommendations is around continuing that work to close it over the medium term, just to provide that certainty to members. There's also a good understanding of the budget gap, and the range of assumptions used are benchmarked and compared to other councils as well. The second recommendation that we make is around kind of considering the impact when decisions are being made, which kind of links into this section, but I'll revisit in just a moment. And then at the kind of the closing section of the report there, we highlight that the council has robust reporting and oversight arrangements, and during our field work was developing a new monitoring board to provide additional governance in response to the challenges of balancing the budget that I touched on earlier. So there are two recommendations made at the end of the report. The first one I've already touched on, and the second one around impact is around kind of understanding impact, not just at the point that members are making decisions, but then also as decisions are implemented, has the impact been measured to, compared to what was anticipated? So that an assessment can be made whether a saving, for example, has materialized and would potentially cost more because of an unforeseen impact, for example. The two recommendations I would say are common features across Wales in terms of closing that gap and understanding the impact after the decision is made, just to provide that assurance to the committee. So that's all I wanted to run through on that report, just to bring to your attention. But if anyone has any questions, myself, Sarah Jane and David will do our best to answer them.
Yes, thank you, Charles, for that, and thanks for the report. Obviously, the other 21 authorities will have most probably similar recommendations, but maybe have a few more, or maybe have less, but we'll wait and see. Councillor Simon Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. I think my view on this is that it's extremely helpful, but I think it could have gone further. And what I mean by that is that we've said here that we as council have a good understanding of the shortfall, and I would agree with that. However, when we get to paragraph 22 on page 29, we talk about of the 21.9 million savings that have been are planned, only 6.9 of those actually have a green rating. And so the vast majority of the savings that need to be achieved still have no developed plan to do that. And I feel that that's a quite significant risk. What my perception of the council at the moment is that it's taken an approach which is, I think that the common term is salami slicing. In other words, it's looking across all services and trying to cut. And with the approach that we have in terms of a decision-making approach to get a plan to meet the MTFS savings, is that salami slicing, which in the past has identified savings, but those have not always been effectively implemented. And if we look at our position here, where we are just halfway into the year, and we're already projecting a 9 million overspend, and we had a 9 million overspend last year as well, I think we are, at the moment, we have a much higher risk of not achieving those than you might identify. Now, I know this looks to last year, and I'm talking a little bit about this year, but I actually feel that we don't have the decision-making capability to be able to take the next step of type of decisions that need to be made. In other words, significant service cuts, which are what we're talking about here. A chief executive is in public said many times that we need to be looking at a substantially smaller council that we've had in the past because of the funding constraints that will be going on. Inflation is still far higher than the increase that we will get in our grants. And therefore, we do need to look at a smaller council, but we don't have decision making to enable that to happen at this stage. And so, as a governance committee, I think that's the area where I'm most concerned about, which is how do we get from a position of the historical salami slicing, which has actually failed to deliver cost savings over the last couple of years with overspends, into a position where we make the big strategic decisions that are actually required of us probably in the next 3 months. So I'm sorry for being a little bit long, but I think that's sort of where I see this at the moment. It goes further than I think you've identified in this report.
Thank you for that, Councillor Griffiths. I wouldn't have thought that Audit Wales are able to answer that question, because its reality is it's a council decision now. Obviously, we've had a response from the council in regards to how they intend to identify moving forward. So, you know, Audit Wales have picked it up. They've said this is what you need to strengthen. So in reality, it will be matter for the officers of the authority, and then ultimately the council itself. And I say that it is the council itself, because there are difficult decisions to be made, as you quite rightly say, Councillor Griffiths, you know, and some of those difficult decisions, which we don't get involved in this committee, may well be unpalatable, but they do need to be raised. But Caris, did you want to make a comment?
If I may just try to summarise, my overall question is, does Audit Wales feel we have the decision-making capability to make those big decisions?
Right. I don't think that's covered in this report, is it? So, but my understanding is there's an audit report about decision-making within the authority, isn't there? And I think that's coming to our committee next time. So it'll be interesting to see what that says, Simon.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I was just going to add a few comments. I mean, we put in our response form that we accept the recommendations. To go back to Charles's comment, I think the way the report is written is actually more helpful to us than maybe they have been in previous years, because they are forward-looking and they are taking into account changes that we've got planned and how they will impact. And I think that's a really helpful, positive step forward, to be fair. So you'll see that we've accepted the recommendations. I do take on board the comments that Councillor Griffiths is saying, and as you said, Chair, that report is due to come to us now in November, which is the Audit Wales report on decision making in Bridgend. So I think there's a good link from this report into that one when we actually consider that one in November. I think a comment was made, and it's in the report, about the developments we're putting in place to bring more rigour into the system. And Councillor Griffiths has mentioned the current predicted outturn for this financial year. There are meetings going on now with regards to, and what are we going to do about that? And looking at exactly what he said, this is no longer just taking off a bit here and a bit there. This is looking at wholesale change. And that's certainly some of the issues that are coming forward now as we're preparing for next year's budget. And I think it's key on us, and it is in one of these recommendations, that we keep members informed and involved in some of that. So we are doing a lot more briefing with members now so that they understand the position. And we promise to keep doing that as we roll through the budget setting process.
Thank you for that, Caris. I think, as you said, you know, it's very tough in local government at the moment, and financially, and I'll make a comment at the end around some of the assumptions you make. it's very difficult, you know, the change in times, different demands on different services, the unpredictability, as you said, of some of those demands coming in. It does need a collective response to these matters, not one bashing another, because if you don't do that, then there will be unpalatable decisions to be made. And everyone needs to take responsibility for that. You know, not everyone can get what they want out of this. It's actually what was needed. So thank you for that comment. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. My take on it, from my perspective, is I think there are a lot of positives in this report, and the one that really jumped out at me, if we're looking at decision making, is there's a quote on page 28 which describes the council as, I think the term is agile, being agile and changing its arrangements in response of increased risks to financial sustainability. So I think having that comment there, I think does give considerable assurance. I think what's key to it is the two big recommendations at the end. I've looked at the management response, and that looks pretty robust and covers all of the areas. And I think the timescales are also good as well, because I think most of them give an end of this year deadline. If we can keep to that, I think we are doing what we should be doing on as far as this report is concerned. Thanks.
Martin. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. One more for the officers, really. At page 28, section 19 of the report, the importance of member engagement in financial plan is discussed, and it also mentions that the BREP did not function as effectively as in previous years. So I just wondered what changes are being proposed to improve member involvement in the 25-26 budget.
I'm happy to take that one, Chair. Yeah, we've undertaken to give regular all-member feedback sessions. So we did one in July after the Q1 revenue report was published. The Q2 revenue position will be in Cabinet in October, and I've undertaken that we will do exactly the same thing again. So I anticipate, Councillor Smith, we will do that at key stages now throughout the financial year. I have to say that the first one that we did in July, was very well attended. We had a lot of members there, which was good, and some good dialogue at that point. We've also undertaken to have meetings with individual groups, and we've done those as well over the summer. And that again is to answer any queries, enable a conversation between all of us with regards to that. And there was a budget research and evaluation panel meeting yesterday, and there was a good discussion there about how we can involve more members in getting down into some of the detail, through which we can then bring up some priorities for BREP to look at as they move forward. So it's trialling it this year to see how that works and to see whether or not members do feel more engaged with the process. But certainly we're doing a lot to make sure that all members have the opportunity to understand our financial position.
Caris, before I invite Councillor Griffiths to come in, I was just wondering whether the group, the BREP group, is that cross-party?
It is cross-party, and it's politically balanced as well.
It's excellent, because obviously you get a consensus, hopefully, there. You know, you may agree to disagree, but hopefully everyone understands where you're at. So that's really good. Thank you. Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce Caris's comments there. I think we are seeing as members a greater openness and a view. And I also did welcome the BREP meeting yesterday with the more inclusion of members. So I think what Caris is, I just say to absolutely agree with Caris. My question actually was on page 29 on section 27. We mentioned a comparative spending report from the WLGA. Now, apologies if I've missed this in my emails, but is that available to members, and is it available to the public, please?
It's been made available to the members who sit on the Budget Research and Evaluation panel. And what I agreed yesterday was that I will resend that out to those members, because it did come out a while ago. It hasn't been dispersed any wider than that. I don't think there's any reason why it couldn't go to the whole councillor group if members think that would be happy. That would be helpful. We can certainly distribute it wider. but it's not a public document as such. It's an internal document to enable us to look from a different angle as to what our options may be on the budget going forward.
And I can understand why we may want to keep it internal, because it probably needs a huge amount of interpretation to actually understand how it applies to our council and compare it to other councils. So I understand the need for some careful handling of that document. But I think if you could resend it again, Caris, because I certainly missed it the first time, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon and Caris. Deb, welcome.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks, Chair. Just a quick question for me, I guess. I'm really struck by the thematic approach that is taken in this report, and what opportunity there may be to look at the co-location of other local authorities through the thematic approach and explore what other options or models may be more palatable. So what is the process behind that ability to move into that thematic wider cross local authority space?
I would suggest, I don't know, Sarah Jane, whether you can help with that, about how Audit Wales pull all of this together and maybe bring forward some good practice that we can all share.
Chair, if you want me to come in there, I guess just
That would be good.
bit, yeah. So just in terms of for the lay members' perspective, in terms of we do thematic reviews more or less most years, to be fair, where we take a particular topic and do that piece of work at each council, and then we often produce a national summary report. So we've also done that, for example, on our digital strategy work. We did a piece of work around performance information. So it is something that we do, fairly often, to be honest. And where we can, we try to draw out if there are any particular interesting practice or things that we think would be useful for others to explore. We also engage, we have a good practice exchange team, so we often do events and sessions as well where we can. I mean, I think at the moment, as Charles said earlier, we are doing a national summary piece of work on the financial sustainability thematic. I don't think we'll be holding up a particular council to say this is how to do it. Each one is working through it differently. Each one has got local issues, local risks that they're needing to consider. However, we have had some discussion internally about what we could do to perhaps prompt some further conversation on the back of that national summary report. So it is something that's, on our radar, but we haven't kind of made any sort of decisions on that at the moment. But just in terms of, to give you assurance and talk through about how we do our approach more generally, really. I don't know if that's quite answered your question there, but please come back to me if not, and perhaps I can share some further information out of committee. Thank you.
Deb, did that deal with it?
Yeah, I guess the first part is the understanding what thematically other local authorities, other areas are experiencing that may be similar to ours, then exploring where collaboration and a collective approach may result in us making or taking a different approach to the process and thinking through of decisions. So yes.
Sarah Jane?
Yeah, sorry, just to say, so in terms of that national summary report, that will certainly draw out some of those common themes that we've identified through, through doing this piece of work at all 22 councils. So there will be some things in there in terms of those common themes. I guess in terms of that collaboration piece on the back of that, that's something we haven't kind of further explored at this moment, but would hope, I'm sure Caris will talk about, the treasurers meet frequently, so they have that opportunity to kind of understand what each is doing. And I know they're all having conversations around that. There's obviously lots of significant challenges going on. So there are other mechanisms in place, professional networks, etc., that facilitates that kind of conversation as well.
Sarah Jane. Caris?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to make a comment that I don't think we routinely bring some of the national reports that pull all of this together here, but certainly on the financial resilience one, once the national one is published, I'm more than happy to make sure that the link for that report comes out across all GAC membership.
Thanks, Caris. Are there any other questions? Are there any comments? Oh, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, not so much a question as a comment, really. So it is a good report. We are in the right place for the coming storm, if you like. We're in the middle of really bad weather, but coming storm, yeah, if I can use that analogy. One of the paragraphs that jumped out to me was the equality impact issues. The difficulty we've got is it's an ever-moving feast, isn't it? It's constantly changing. So how do you measure impact when we could measure it from today, but next week it might be completely different? And that's a concern as a council in terms of the impact on our communities. It's a really difficult one. That's the first thing I'd like to say. Second thing then, this was raised the last time we spoke to Audit Wales. Sana, could you tell us a little bit about, you've got an audit committee, effective practices and a positive impact event on the 9th of October. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please? Thanks.
Chair, yes, of course, happy to come in on that. We did another event earlier on this year. I think, Chair, you may have attended that one. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. So it is a session where we're looking to show, to help prompt some discussion around how, GAC's governance and audit committees can be more effective, to talk about different practices elsewhere. And this is the second session now that is happening up in North Wales, but there was one earlier this year, which I think was really well attended. We had really good feedback from that. As said, Chair, did you attend that? I don't know if there was anything particularly you wanted to share from your experience, if you did. But yes, and certainly, encouraged people to attend because it was, well attended and we had good feedback.
Sorry, maybe there will be one hopefully next year, and then it may be open up to wider, Yeah. Okay. The only comments I'd like to make is clearly the national reports are, as been mentioned, is the collaborative agenda. Now, collaboration has been on the agenda for the last, 15, 20 years. The unfortunate thing is, and we were in a collaborative agenda for one of our services, which reports to this committee, and the biggest authority then decides that they want to pull out. And I think the problem is that's at the detriment of some of the smaller authorities. And, size counts on some of these things. If you're the biggest, you think you can do it all. If you're the smallest, then you're struggling. And I think there is a need at some stage to identify that because, if we're going to provide the basic high-level services that the authority has to provide, then there is a need to collaborate on lots of the other services, and people will know, and I shouldn't say it, but, I was one for legal services merging because everyone had their own legal team on 1996, and some of them weren't even big enough to deliver whatever they had to deliver, and that just goes on. Finances are reducing, and I think there does need to be a mature relationship, discussion and relationship at some stage to say actually what can be delivered collaboratively, because even the biggest councils at the moment are complaining about the financial settlement and they haven't got enough money, but there we are, that's another thing. Before I ask Charles to come in, the other issue is the assumptions. I think one of the biggest issues, which local government suffers with usually is when Welsh Government gives their likely settlement for local government. I know it's been, given in the last couple of years over a 3-year period. But if you're only told, that next year it's going to be an estimated 1% uplift or it's going to be cost neutral, so you're going to have a 0%, then again, a lot of these assumptions, if you're going to have a 0 uplift, then that's a cut, whatever you say, to service delivery and services. And then the authorities, as you quite rightly say, then have to make other assumptions in regards to how they're going to deliver services within the authority. So I think there is some requirements in some respects, because I think health are given a 5-year programme of their budget settlements. Whereas in local government, it used to be year in and year out. And medium-term financial planning is wonderful, isn't it? At the end of the day, you give your medium-term financial plan. But I do hope that in some other authorities, which I'm aware of, they didn't do a medium-term financial plan over the 5 or 3-year period, which is required by SIPFA. They only did a 1-year plan and said we will deal with it later in the day. And those issues need to be picked up, as you quite rightly say. But there are so many variables, as you said, Councillor Davis. Things happen which are completely come out of the side, and the local authority has to be agile to deal with it. but normally it comes down to funding, which is the big issue. And then you have to rob Peter to pay Paul. So, as I said, I don't envy anyone in this room that has to make those decisions, but you do have to, I understand you have to make a plans how to deliver it, but it's getting more and more difficult. That's the comments I make. Sorry, Charles.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just to clarify a couple of things. Firstly, on the national report, whilst it will touch on the potential opportunities for collaboration at quite a high level, that's not going to be a central focus. It is very much bringing together the local themes along with the kind of common pressures. So kind of the cost of social care, temporary accommodation, and those kind of things as well as drawing on some publications made by SIPFA around lessons that could possibly be learnt from Section 114 notices in England, for example. And that kind of brings me on to the point around the settlement. We have not audited the settlement or the Welsh funding, government's funding formula, etc. But the national report will provide a commentary on some of the views of. I'm sure you'll appreciate there are 22 different views on the settlement and formula. So that will be included in the national report. What I would say is, as you've touched on, there are some challenges where a funding timescale is not set out over multiple years for medium-term financial planning. But the criteria that we've set for this work, which is in Appendix 1, is based on some guidance set by SIPFA. And one of the things that they really emphasise is around modelling the impact. It's around that kind of scenario planning, so that when different kind of challenges emerge, the council has a response that it's already considered and thought about, ready to deploy. And that's the real strength of using modelling and assumption planning to best respond when those challenges come down the line. So I just wanted to highlight that to you, Chair, just on the back of your comments. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for that, Charles. Simon?
Yeah, just want to come back in on the report we mentioned earlier. I have found it now. I think it was August 2023, which is why it is the back of my memory. So I would request consideration of Carys picking this up and distributing it to members. But I think that we may need to go further than that. I think that report is actually very useful, and I think a briefing session for the full members, either by the party basis on which you've done it sort of recently, or onto a full members, might be helpful, because I think there's some really important information there that helps us as a council understand how we compare to the other councils in our area.
I'm happy to take that forward, Councillor Griffiths, and see what the best way is of getting that information out to members and enabling a conversation. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. And Charles, just one final comment. I think the message from 22 councils will be the same in some respects. There's not enough money in the system, so everyone's suffering. Depending upon where you are in the system, there's not enough money in the system. And the other thing I was just thinking about, though, in some respects, this ain't just a local authority issue. Local authorities need to be supported by health and other bodies, and I think there's a point to be raised there, isn't it? We look at the financial sustainability of a local authority, but if other partners are not playing their part in this game, and we all talk about health and social care, and you'll find on the news every night, health will say there's not enough social care, and social care say there's not enough in the primary health and the secondary health service. So there's a bigger agenda item here in reality, and whilst I understand clearly this is focused on local government, but there's a bigger discussion and debate to be had, I would have thought, upon which I don't think you can comment, or unless you're going to pick it up wider in the report.
I was just going to draw your attention, Chair, and the wider members to a piece of opinion piece that the Auditor General put out towards the start of the year around from firefighting to future proofing, which kind of draws on sector specific issues, but also some of those commonalities and common themes across the public sector in true audit speak. So possibly not in the same way that you've described, but I just wanted to flag that to your attention.
Thank you, Charles. I like it in plain English. Just tell me as it is. Thanks for that. I think we've had enough, we've given this enough discussion at the moment. So I'm going to move the recommendations. The recommendation is to note the Audit Wales Governance and Audit Committee report at Appendix A, along with the Council's management response form at Appendix B. And I was going to ask for another recommendation, 9.2, that this matter be placed on the regulated tracker, because obviously I think we do need to keep an eye on I'm not saying you won't comply with the management response. I'm sure you will, because obviously you're going to be in the next budget round as well shortly, so you're going to be under immense pressure to deal with this. But I would hope that Alex wouldn't mind getting it put on the tracker. Someone prepared to move,
Chair,
please?
with the amendment.
Thank you, Richard. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No, thank you very much. Okay, draft statement of accounts. Nigel, is it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning. For the recording, Nigel Smith, Group Manager, Chief Accountant. So the purpose of this report is to present to the committee the Council's draft statement of accounts for 23-24 for noting. The committee is responsible for the reviewing of the annual statement of accounts, the appropriateness of the accounting policies and whether they have been followed correctly, and whether there are any concerns arising from the financial statements or from the audit that needs to be brought to the attention of the Council. The audit will assess the application of the accounting policies and whether the financial statements present a true and fair view of the Council's income and expenditure for the year and the resources as at the year end. They will report to the committee any errors or omissions identified during their audit and whether these have been corrected in the final audited statements that will be presented to this committee for approval once the audit has been completed. And this will then give the committee assurance that the accounts have been properly completed. The statement of accounts are complex and must meet a number of requirements. They are prepared in accordance with the Code of Practice developed by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy and legislative requirements. Preparation and publication of the accounts is a statutory requirement, aims to provide a true and fair view of the Council's financial position, provides accountability to include electors, taxpayers, those charged with governance, funders and employees, allows comparison across financial years, allows a consolidation of the whole of government account statutory returns, and allows interested parties to review and raise questions to the Council and its auditors. Included with the report, Appendix B, is SIPFA's understanding local authority financial statements, which can be read alongside the accounts to aid their understanding. The draft accounts were provided to Audit Wales on the 17th of July 2024 for audit and have been posted as draft onto the Council's website. The public inspection dates run from 2nd to 27th September, and queries can be presented to the auditor from 30th September. Completion of the audit is expected to be during November, and it is intended to present the audited accounts to this committee in November for approval. So the recommendation, Chair, if I may take the committee there, is for the committee to note the unaudited statement of accounts 23-24. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Before I accept any questions, I must apologise to Sarah Jane and Charles. I didn't thank them for presenting their Audit Wales report, and if they're off the screen at the moment, David, can you just give them my apology? Oh, there's Sarah Jane there. Sarah, I apologise. I cut you off so quickly, which I didn't mean to do, but please accept my apology. But thank you, and Charles, for delivering the report.
No problem. I'll pass it on to Charles because I know he's left the meeting now, but thank you.
Okay, back to this matter then. You've got the report before you. Any questions? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a number of points, so if I go through them in sequence, perhaps we can pick them up. I think initially the term materiality is raised, in fact, it's in the introduction there. I've done my own research about what that means, but I think it might be useful just to have a short definition and also an explanation of why the sum of 4.5 million has been highlighted. There must be a methodology of doing that, and to have some understanding, I think, would be useful there. Second point then is on page 94 about Arwen Trust. It is stated in the narrative that the council has 2 representatives on the board. But when I just checked, we're not represented on Arwen Trust as far as I'm aware. There must have been a policy change or whatever reason. So I'd just be interested to see what the situation is. And on the subject of Arwen, we note a substantial increase of grant from £3.6 million to 4.4 million. I know in terms of the statement of accounts, they're not designed to go into the whys and wherefores or whatever. But what I would like is some assurance that within our scrutiny framework, that payments to Arwen performance and partnership arrangements are being monitored and are being looked at. The other point then, which is a bit specific, is on page 115 about employer pension contributions. Most are accounted for, but there's an amount shown of £0.23 million and 0.08 million, which are shown as being unfunded. I think if we could just have an explanation of why that is, and a comment then. I think that the SIPFA guide is very useful to have that right at the end, so it's a way of cross-referencing. And finally, just a little tongue-in-cheek, I'm not sure why we've chosen the cover photo for our statement of accounts, which shows us as being on the rocks.
I'm sure we'll get responses in due course. I think Caris is waiting to the end one. Nigel.
Yeah, thank you for that. We do like to change the image every year, so yes. No, there's no pun intended. In terms of the sort of more detailed questions in relation to Arwen Trust and the payments to Arwen, certainly in terms of the membership, I'll have to take that away. I don't have that information to hand, I'm afraid. And also the same on the pensions one. If I could take that away, and we'll come back with a detailed response, if that's okay. I might, if I could, refer to Audit Wales, if they won't mind, in terms of how they calculate their materiality, to give us a bit more information, if that's okay, Chair.
Bid.
Yeah, can you hear me, Chair? Good morning, all.
Yes, that's okay, thanks.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, materiality is it's based upon a calculation. It's a calculation which uses the gross expenditure of the council, and then we take a percentage of that based on our risk assessment of the councils and our understanding of the audit approach. So it's a benchmark really, which we use to show or obtain sort of reasonable assurance around any sort of material misstatements within the financial statements themselves, which could impact on the understanding or usability of those financial statements. So it's a calculation we take. It's applied through each of the audits that we undertake. And I think the figure of 4.5 million, which was referenced, is the material value which we've calculated based on the gross expenditure, like I said, in the accounts. So clearly we can't test all the transactions which the council processes through the year, so we need to take a sort of risk-based, focused approach, and part of that sort of risk assessment is the application of the materiality levels, and we focus on those areas of the accounts which are material to the reader's understanding of the financial statements themselves. So hopefully that provides an overview of materiality for members.
Martin, is that okay?
Yeah, I think if there's some way of sort of cross-referencing that, you know, that the formulation of that, I think would be quite useful. Okay.
Thank you. Anything else, Nigel? That's it. Okay, Martin, thank you. Councillor Griffiths.
Yes, question of process, really. I note that this has come to us for noting before it's gone to COSC. I would have thought it should probably have been the other way around. And I know we will get the other accounts later, but as part of our responsibilities to make sure that the governance is right, what would we normally expect this to go to COSC, and then for any changes that COSC recognised, then to come to us, and so we can sign it off as being noted as the final draft, if you like?
I'll get the officers. Caris?
Within our constitution here in Bridgend, the responsibility for seeing and signing off these accounts actually rests with governance and audit. So our normal reporting train is to bring you the draft accounts as we are doing now. You will then have the final accounts once they've been audited and agreed by Audit Wales when they've completed their work, and it's Governance and Audit Committee here in Bridgend that sign those off. I think we do take then the final agreed statement of accounts goes to Council for noting, but the decision with regards to agreeing and the final accounts actually rests here with Governance and Audit.
If I may have a follow-up, so will the draft accounts go to COSC as well?
No, the whole responsibility lies here with the Governance and Audit Committee.
Okay, thank you, Clarice.
Yeah, we've got a statutory responsibility, so I think it's set out in the Act, isn't it? So that's the main thing. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I note that the reserves have decreased from 9.8 to 9.7 million. So just on a wider point, I wonder how the council plan to ensure that the reserve levels are sustainable in the face of the future financial pressures.
I think for the first time in a number of years, the council is in a position where it's not able to increase its reserves. Certainly in previous years, we've been able to due to underspends on our revenue account. That wasn't the case last year, and it doesn't look like it's going to be the case this year. So we do keep a close eye on those reserves, and you know, we're looking at them all of the time at the moment to review priorities with elected members as to how some of those reserves are being used, and we will continue to monitor, and we do report the position to members on a regular basis.
Thank you, Caris. Any other questions? No? Any comments? No? Oh, Colin.
Actually, yeah, just page 50, risk management. I think it's summed up really, isn't it, in the possible consequences. It says the more difficult decision to cut or reduce service levels must be made, or the council will not deliver the changes necessary to achieve a balanced budget, but which will result in the council being in breach of its legal responsibilities. I think that's, you know, as well as the impact of the cuts on our communities, it's that issue, in breach of our legal responsibilities, which is the worst thing that can happen, really, isn't it? So, yeah, thanks, Chair.
Colin. Okay, no other comments then. If we go to the recommendation that we note the unaudited statement of accounts for 23-24 at Appendix A. I'm going to put in another recommendation, if I may, not affecting yourselves here. But given the point that Councillor Hughes made about, is it Arwent Trust? I think this matter needs to be referred to the appropriate scrutiny committee for them to confirm to this committee that Arwent Trust are complying with all the requirements of Bridgend County Borough Council, because if there are, I don't aware of them, what they need to do, but clearly Councillor Hughes has raised some very specific issues. If they're not complying with their contractual responsibility with this council or whatever, then we need to know. So it's that auditing, has it taken place, as scrutiny looked at it, is the key thing, or as the directorate looked at it, is the key issue here. Unless someone can tell me, yes, everything is hunky-dory, then let's refer it to scrutiny and the director and get a comment back. Are people happy with that? Because I think you raised a very pertinent point there, Martin, and we need to pick it up. Okay. Okay. Is it? Oh, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. We probably agree to disagree again. But if this is a matter of concern to this committee, then this committee should be looking at our interest, and maybe internal audit could have a look at what they're up to, see whether they comply with what we expect them to do, and return a report to us. But I'm sure we'll agree to disagree, Chair.
Well, not necessarily. I think it could be a matter for the director to ask the audit service to look at it. Oh, Caris, you're going to come in a minute.
Well, all I was going to say is I think you've picked up an issue from the council, which is very valid. What we need to do is go away and just have a breakdown of why there's that increase in funding for a start to see whether or not that's easily recognisable. We can also get the answer for you on who sits on the trust. And we can also look at what are the reporting lines in, because I'm pretty sure they do go to scrutiny committee. Unfortunately, I don't attend that one, so I don't. So so I think we could certainly do that initially, and I can certainly find out whether or not our interest has been to scrutiny recently, and if it has, what are the issues. Well, actually, Rachel's got a hand up. Rachel would probably know this better than I would, really.
Yeah, Councillor Williams, I'm not against you here. I think if there's an issue which needs to be looked at by audit, then we get the Regional Audit Service to look at it.
Thank you, Chair. We'll agree to agree.
First time ever, but there we are. No. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it actually did go to SOC 2 at its last meeting, funnily enough, where they did look at the contractual arrangements. So I can certainly get some information regarding that. I can share the report with the committee. And if, again, as I said, you feel there's still something to look at either by yourselves or by the scrutiny committee, then we can look at that further. But I will certainly share that information and the outcome.
Thank you, Rachel. I think that would be useful. And again, if if the county's giving tremendous amount of money to them, then obviously they need to be held accountable and responsible for that. So, so that would be very useful. Thank you for that. Okay. Someone move the recommendations then?
I'll move the recommendation and the amendment, Chair.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, seconded.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. Annual governance statement next.
That's me. Thank you, Chair. So the